The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the busy streets of the city. Marcus Johnson, a 42-year-old man with a steady job and a calm personality, was walking home after a long day at work. He carried a small grocery bag in one hand, thinking about the dinner he would prepare for himself and his elderly mother, who lived just a few blocks away. The streets were full of people hurrying to their homes or running last-minute errands, and cars moved slowly in the fading sunlight. It was the kind of ordinary day that promised nothing more than routine, yet Marcus had no idea that it would soon turn into one of the most frightening experiences of his life. As he approached the corner near a small grocery store, he noticed a police car slowly making its way down the street. At first, he didn't think much of it. Police cars were common in this part of the city, often patrolling to keep the neighborhood safe. But then the car stopped suddenly, right in front of him. Two officers stepped out. Their faces were stern, and their eyes followed him with unusual intensity. "Sir," one of the officers called out, "we need to talk to you." Marcus froze for a moment, unsure what he had done wrong. He raised his hand slightly, a gesture meant to show he meant no harm. "Yes, officer," he asked politely. His voice was calm, and there was no trace of fear in it, though he felt his heart start to beat faster in his chest. The officer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked closer, circling Marcus slowly as if studying him. "You've been acting suspicious," the officer said finally. "We need you to come with us." Marcus shook his head gently. "I'm just walking home," he said. "I haven't done anything wrong." The second officer stepped forward, his voice louder now. "Don't argue with us. You're coming with us." By this time, a small group of people had started to gather near the corner. Some of them were watching silently, while others were holding up their phones, recording what was happening. The atmosphere was tense. People whispered to each other, unsure whether to intervene or just watch. Marcus knew that resisting would only make things worse. He raised his hands fully, showing that he was not a threat. "Okay, I'll cooperate," he said calmly. "Please tell me what this is about." But instead of responding with an explanation, the officers became more aggressive. One of them grabbed Marcus roughly by the arm. "Move," the officer shouted, pushing him toward the side of the street. Marcus stumbled but tried to keep his balance. "Please, I'm not resisting," he said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. Despite his words, the officers did not stop. They began using their batons, striking him on the shoulders and back. Each blow caused a sharp pain, but Marcus gritted his teeth and tried to stay calm. Around him, people gasped and shouted in shock. Some called for the officers to stop, but the forceful police presence made it impossible for anyone to step forward. The onlookers could see that Marcus was not fighting back. He was not doing anything to provoke the officers. Yet, the attacks continued. His grocery bag fell to the ground, spilling some of the items he had just bought. He fell to his knees, holding his arms up to protect himself, but the strikes kept coming. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Why are you hitting him? He hasn't done anything." The officer didn't respond. His face was cold and emotionless. The scene felt unreal, like something out of a nightmare. Marcus could hear the murmurs of the crowd, the click of phones recording every moment, and the harsh shouts of the officers ordering him to stand up and move. Marcus's mind raced. He wondered if anyone would believe his side of the story. He thought about his mother waiting at home, about the simple meal he had planned to make, and about how suddenly life could change in just a few minutes. Yet, through the pain and fear, he tried to remain composed. He knew that losing control could make the situation far worse. The officers finally stopped for a moment, perhaps to catch their breath. Marcus stood up slowly, wincing from the pain in his back and arms. He looked around at the small crowd that had gathered, their faces showing concern and anger. Some were speaking to each other quietly, discussing what they had just witnessed. Others were calling family members or friends to tell them about the incident. Marcus felt a mix of emotions: fear, frustration, and disbelief, but also a deep sadness. He could not understand why he had been treated this way. He was a law-abiding citizen, a professional who had contributed to his community, yet here he was, being attacked in public without any reason. Finally, one of the officers spoke, his tone slightly less aggressive but still commanding. "Step aside. You're going to come with us now." Marcus raised his hands again, nodding slowly. He did not resist. He walked with the officers toward their car, trying to keep his balance despite the pain from the baton strikes. Every step was difficult, but he focused on staying calm. He could feel the eyes of the onlookers following him, and the knowledge that people had witnessed the attack gave him a small sense of hope. As he was being led to the car, Marcus noticed the expressions on the faces of those around him. Some were shocked, some were angry, and some were quietly filming. He realized that this moment, though painful and frightening, might not end with silence. People were watching, and perhaps, just perhaps, someone would speak out on his behalf. When they finally reached the police car, Marcus was carefully pushed inside. The doors closed with a loud thud, and the world outside seemed distant for a moment. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, and thought about what would happen next. He did not know if anyone would help him, if justice would be served, or if the story would end with him alone and unheard. But even in that moment, Marcus refused to let fear take over completely. He reminded himself of who he was: a man who had lived with integrity, who had worked hard for his community, and who had the courage to face challenges head-on. The officers may have had power in that moment, but Marcus had something stronger, the knowledge that he was right, and that the truth would matter in the end. The car drove off slowly, taking Marcus toward an uncertain fate. Behind the tinted windows, the small crowd began to disperse, talking amongst themselves about what had just happened. The city street returned to its usual rhythm, but the memory of the incident lingered in the air like a shadow. Inside the car, Marcus sat quietly, nursing his bruises and trying to process everything that had just occurred. He thought about his family, his work, and the life he had built. He promised himself that he would not let this event define him, nor would he remain silent. Somehow, he would find a way to make his voice heard, to ensure that what happened to him would not be repeated against anyone else. As the car continued through the city streets, Marcus felt a mixture of pain, anger, and determination. The attack had been unjust, cruel, and unnecessary. Yet, he realized that he had survived, and that survival gave him a chance. A chance to tell his story, a chance to stand up for justice, and a chance to make a difference. Even though the afternoon had turned into a nightmare, Marcus knew one thing clearly: this was not the end. It was only the beginning of a journey that would test him in ways he could not yet imagine, but also a journey that might inspire others to stand against injustice. In that moment of quiet resolve, he decided to face whatever came next with courage, dignity, and unwavering determination. The city hummed around him, unaware of the small battle that had just taken place on its streets. But for Marcus, every sound, every shadow, and every passing glance carried the weight of what had happened. And deep down, he knew that the story of that afternoon would not end quietly. It was already beginning to ripple outward, touching lives in ways he could not yet see. The videos of Marcus Johnson being beaten by the police spread quickly. Someone in the crowd had filmed the incident on their phone and uploaded it to social media. Within hours, the short clip had been shared hundreds of times, and the outrage was immediate. People all over the city were watching, horrified by what they saw. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others could hardly believe that something like this could happen in the middle of a busy street, in broad daylight, with so many people around. The next morning, Marcus woke up in his small apartment, his body sore and bruised. His shoulders ached from the blows, and even the simplest movements caused sharp pangs of pain. Despite the discomfort, his phone was already buzzing with messages. Friends, family, and even people he did not know had seen the video and were reaching out to offer support. His inbox was flooded with messages of encouragement and concern. People wrote things like, "We're here for you, and stay strong. Justice will come." Marcus felt a wave of emotion as he read through them. For the first time since the attack, he realized that he was not alone. Meanwhile, the city was in uproar. News stations picked up the video, broadcasting it repeatedly on television. Headlines screamed about police brutality, and reporters interviewed witnesses who had been on the street that day. "I saw him being hit, and he wasn't resisting at all," one witness said. "It was so unnecessary. I couldn't believe my eyes." Another described how people in the crowd had tried to speak up, but they were too afraid to intervene. The story quickly became one of the most talked about topics in the city, with local politicians and community leaders weighing in on the incident. Marcus's friends and family encouraged him to go public with his story. At first, he was hesitant. He did not want to become the center of attention or to seem like he was seeking sympathy. But after a few long discussions, he realized that staying silent would allow the injustice to go unnoticed. With the support of his loved ones, he agreed to speak to journalists and share what had happened. He wanted people to understand that this was not just about him, it was about the larger issue of fairness and equality, and the need to hold those in power accountable. Social media continued to play a critical role in spreading the story. Hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus and #StopPoliceBrutality began trending. People across the country shared the videos, expressing anger and solidarity. Activists used the incident to call for reforms in policing and better training for officers on how to handle situations without resorting to violence. Marcus watched all of this unfold, feeling a mix of hope and concern. He knew that while attention could bring justice, it also meant that everyone would be watching his life in a way he had never experienced before. At the same time, the police department released a statement. They described the situation as a routine intervention and claimed that Marcus had been uncooperative, which led to the use of minimal force. The statement did not mention the video or the public outcry, and it failed to explain why the officers had struck Marcus repeatedly. The statement only made people angrier. Citizens and community leaders criticized it as being dismissive and lacking accountability. "This is not acceptable," said a local council member. "We need transparency, and we need justice for Marcus Johnson." The pressure on the police department grew. Community groups organized meetings and peaceful protests, demanding an explanation. Flyers were posted in neighborhoods, and local radio stations discussed the issue at length. Everyone wanted answers. People shared their own stories of encounters with law enforcement, many of which echoed Marcus's experience. It became clear that this incident was not isolated, but part of a larger pattern that needed attention. Meanwhile, Marcus took time to recover physically. He went to the hospital the day after the attack to get a full checkup. Doctors examined him carefully, documenting his injuries for legal purposes. His arms and shoulders were sore, and he had several bruises, but fortunately, there were no broken bones. The medical staff treated him with care, acknowledging the trauma he had gone through. Marcus appreciated their kindness. It reminded him that while some people had failed him, others were willing to offer support and compassion. At home, Marcus began writing down his thoughts and experiences. He wanted to keep a detailed record of the day of the attack, the aftermath, and the feelings it brought up. Writing helped him process the events and gave him a sense of control over a situation that had felt completely out of his hands. Each word he wrote felt like a step toward reclaiming his life and making sure that his story would be heard. His family was a constant source of strength. His mother, who had worried endlessly about him, was relieved to see that he was physically okay, though she remained concerned about the emotional impact of the incident. Friends visited frequently, bringing meals and spending time with him to offer comfort. Marcus realized how much the support of others mattered in times of crisis. It reminded him that he was not just fighting for himself, but for everyone who had been silenced or overlooked in similar situations. The community's response continued to grow. Local businesses offered to help organize rallies and events to raise awareness. Neighborhood groups held meetings to discuss ways to support Marcus and others who might face similar challenges. Volunteers created online petitions calling for an official investigation into the police conduct. People were coming together in ways Marcus had never expected, and it gave him hope that change might be possible. Marcus also received legal advice from attorneys who specialized in civil rights cases. They explained his options and helped him understand how to proceed in seeking justice. Marcus was grateful for their guidance, though he knew that the process could be long and challenging. Still, he felt empowered knowing that he had experts on his side, ready to help him navigate the complicated legal system. Despite the attention and support, Marcus struggled with fear and anxiety. Every time he stepped outside, he was reminded of what had happened. He worried about encountering the same officers or facing retaliation. Sleepless nights became common, as he replayed the events in his mind and thought about what the future might hold. But even in those moments of fear, he found strength in the knowledge that he had done nothing wrong and that many people believed in his story. The media coverage continued to shine a light on the incident. Journalists interviewed Marcus, asking him to recount the events with as much detail as possible. He spoke openly, describing the fear, confusion, and pain he had felt. He wanted the world to understand that his story was not just about being beaten, it was about the need for fairness, accountability, and change. His words were powerful, resonating with viewers and readers alike. As the days passed, Marcus noticed that people in his neighborhood began to watch police interactions more closely. They asked questions, took notes, and sometimes recorded incidents themselves. The attack on Marcus had sparked a conversation that went beyond a single event. It encouraged the community to pay attention, to speak out, and to ensure that everyone was treated with dignity and respect. Marcus knew that this was just the beginning of a longer journey. The public attention had created opportunities for change, but it also meant that the path ahead would be challenging. He remained committed to sharing his story, raising awareness, and advocating for justice. Each conversation, each news interview, and each social media post was a small step toward making a difference, not only for himself but for the entire community. By the end of the week, Marcus began to see the impact of the public support. Officials from the city government announced that an investigation would be launched. The police department promised to review the officers' actions, and community leaders continued to push for transparency. For Marcus, this was a moment of cautious optimism. It did not erase the pain or fear, but it offered hope that justice could be served. In the midst of all the attention, Marcus remained humble. He knew that while his story had become a symbol for others, it was still his personal experience. He focused on healing, both physically and emotionally, and on finding ways to contribute positively to his community. The support he received reminded him that even in moments of injustice, there were people willing to stand together for what was right. The incident that had begun as a frightening, painful event had transformed into a catalyst for change. Marcus Johnson, once an ordinary man walking home from work, had become a figure of courage and resilience. Through the power of community, social media, and public attention, his story was making a difference. And though the journey toward justice was far from over, the first steps had been taken, proving that even in the face of fear and violence, one person's voice could inspire action and hope. Marcus Johnson sat in his small living room, sunlight streaming through the window, as he thought about everything that had happened. The bruises on his arms and shoulders were fading, but the memory of the attack remained vivid. Every detail, the sudden stop of the police car, the harsh voices, the strikes of the baton, played over in his mind like a relentless replay. He closed his eyes and tried to breathe deeply, but the fear he had felt still lingered. Despite the public support and growing attention, Marcus realized that healing was not just about the body. He needed to face the emotional scars as well. He picked up his notebook and began to write. Writing had become a daily habit since the incident. He poured his thoughts onto the page, the confusion, the anger, the pain, but also the courage he had felt when he refused to resist. Marcus wrote about the moments when strangers in the crowd had spoken up, and how that small act of courage had given him hope. He described the messages from friends and strangers alike, each one a reminder that people cared. As he wrote, he felt a small sense of control returning. The act of putting his thoughts into words was grounding, helping him process the chaos of that day. While Marcus focused on his personal healing, the legal team he had consulted earlier began preparing the groundwork for a civil rights case. They explained each step carefully, so he understood what to expect. Marcus listened attentively, asking questions whenever something was unclear. He knew that taking legal action would be challenging and emotionally draining, but he also knew it was necessary. Justice was not just for him, it was for anyone who might face similar injustice in the future. In the days that followed, Marcus received invitations to speak at community gatherings and local meetings. At first, he felt nervous. Public speaking had never been his strong suit, and he worried about reliving the trauma every time he told his story. But he realized that by sharing his experience, he could help others. He could turn his pain into something meaningful. With encouragement from his friends and family, Marcus agreed to attend a local community meeting. When he arrived, the room was filled with familiar faces and strangers alike, all gathered to hear about the incident and discuss ways to support victims of police brutality. Marcus felt a mixture of nerves and determination. As he stood before the crowd, he noticed people leaning forward, eager to listen. He took a deep breath and began to speak, recounting the events of that afternoon. He spoke slowly, carefully choosing his words, making sure to emphasize the facts. He described the fear, the confusion, and the overwhelming sense of injustice, but also the courage he had felt when he refused to resist. The audience listened silently, many with tears in their eyes. When Marcus finished speaking, there was a moment of quiet, followed by applause. People came forward to thank him for sharing his story and to express their support. Marcus realized that speaking out had a powerful effect not just for the community, but for himself. It gave him a sense of purpose and a reminder that he could make a difference. At home, Marcus continued to follow the public response to his story. He read articles, watched news segments, and monitored social media. The support from across the country was overwhelming. People shared his story widely, and many offered resources and assistance. Some sent letters of encouragement, while others offered to connect him with organizations that specialized in advocacy and civil rights. Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that one small incident, terrifying as it had been, had the potential to inspire change far beyond his own life. Despite the growing attention, Marcus faced moments of doubt and anxiety. He worried about the officers involved in the attack, wondering if they would retaliate or try to intimidate him. He worried about his safety, even as the community rallied around him. Some nights, he struggled to sleep, his mind replaying the attack over and over. But during the day, he focused on practical steps, meeting with his legal team, attending community events, and writing in his notebook. These actions gave him a sense of control and purpose. One afternoon, Marcus received a phone call that surprised him. It was from a prominent community leader, someone who had a reputation for supporting social justice causes. The leader had seen the video and was deeply moved by Marcus's courage. He offered to meet in person to discuss ways to support Marcus and bring more attention to the case. Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He knew that this meeting could open new doors and create opportunities for broader impact. When they met, the community leader was warm and encouraging. He praised Marcus for his bravery and assured him that he would stand by him throughout the process. They discussed strategies for raising awareness, connecting with advocacy groups, and ensuring that the legal case received proper attention. Marcus felt a renewed sense of hope. For the first time since the attack, he saw a clear path forward. It was not just about seeking justice, it was about creating positive change in the community. At the same time, Marcus began to focus on self-care. He realized that taking care of his mental and emotional well-being was essential for the journey ahead. He started exercising lightly, going for walks in quiet neighborhoods, and practicing mindfulness techniques. These small actions helped him manage stress and maintain his focus. He also spent more time with his mother, sharing meals and stories, and finding comfort in the simple moments of life. The support from friends, family, and the community continued to grow. Local organizations offered workshops on citizens' rights and how to respond to police interactions safely. Marcus participated in some of these events, sharing his experience and listening to others who had faced similar challenges. He realized that his story was part of a larger movement, one that aimed to create a safer and more just society for everyone. Marcus also began to reflect on the role of social media in his journey. The initial video had sparked widespread outrage, but it had also opened doors for dialogue and advocacy. He saw how technology could be a powerful tool for change, connecting people across distances and amplifying voices that might otherwise go unheard. At the same time, he understood the risks of public attention, including criticism and harassment, but he was determined to use his platform responsibly. As the weeks passed, Marcus noticed subtle changes in the community. People were more aware of their surroundings, more willing to speak up when they saw injustice, and more connected through shared experiences. He realized that his story had sparked conversations that went beyond the incident itself. It encouraged people to think critically, question authority when necessary, and stand up for what was right. Despite the challenges, Marcus remained committed to his path. He continued attending meetings, writing in his notebook, and speaking at events. Each action, no matter how small, contributed to the larger goal of justice and awareness. He also began mentoring younger members of the community, sharing lessons about resilience, courage, and the importance of standing up against unfair treatment. Through all of this, Marcus never lost sight of the personal impact of the attack. The physical pain had faded, but the emotional journey was ongoing. He faced moments of fear, doubt, and anger, yet he also experienced moments of hope, solidarity, and empowerment. Each day was a step forward, a chance to reclaim his life and make a difference. By the end of part 3, Marcus had grown in ways he never anticipated. The attack, though traumatic, had revealed his inner strength and resilience. It had connected him with people who shared his values and his vision for a fairer society. And it had shown him that even in the face of fear and injustice, one person's courage could inspire change, touch lives, and create hope for a better future. Marcus knew that the journey was far from over. The legal case would take time, public attention would ebb and flow, and challenges would continue to arise. But he also knew that he was not alone, that his story mattered, and that his actions could help prevent similar injustices in the future. With that understanding, he faced each day with determination, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose. Marcus Johnson had begun to feel a cautious sense of hope in the weeks following the attack, but he knew that real change required more than hope. It required action and support from people with influence. One afternoon, while reviewing emails and messages related to his case, he noticed a message that immediately stood out. It was from a high-ranking official in the city government, someone well known for their work in justice and civil rights. The message was respectful, formal, and yet kind. It invited Marcus to a private meeting to discuss the incident and potential steps to ensure accountability and reform. At first, Marcus hesitated. Meeting with someone so powerful could be intimidating, and he worried about being overwhelmed or feeling pressured. But after speaking with his legal advisors and trusted friends, he decided to accept the invitation. He understood that having a powerful ally could significantly impact the outcome of the investigation and help highlight the importance of his case. This could also create broader change that went beyond his personal experience. The day of the meeting, Marcus dressed neatly and arrived at the City Hall building. The building was imposing, with large glass windows and polished floors, a stark contrast to the neighborhood streets where the attack had occurred. Marcus's heart raced as he approached the office of the official. He was greeted politely and led into a spacious room with comfortable chairs and a large wooden table. He took a seat, trying to steady his nerves as he awaited the arrival of the official. When the door opened, Marcus was surprised by how approachable the figure seemed. The official smiled warmly, extended a hand, and introduced themselves. "Marcus, thank you for coming. I've seen the video, read the reports, and heard about the support you've received from the community. I want you to know that your voice matters, and we are here to make sure justice is pursued properly." Marcus felt a wave of relief. The official's tone was sincere, calm, and reassuring. For the first time since the attack, he felt that someone truly influential was on his side. They began to discuss the incident in detail. Marcus recounted the events as clearly as he could, focusing on the sequence of actions and the impact they had on him. He described the fear, pain, and confusion he experienced, as well as the lasting emotional toll. The official listened carefully, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. They wanted to understand not just the incident itself, but also the broader context, how the community felt, how Marcus was coping, and what could be done to prevent similar events in the future. After listening, the official spoke. "Marcus, this is unacceptable. No one should be treated this way. We will ensure that the officers involved are held accountable, and we will work to implement changes to prevent such incidents. But to make this happen, we need your cooperation and your voice. Your story can guide real change." Marcus nodded. He realized that this meeting was a turning point. It was no longer just about seeking justice for himself, it was about influencing policy, creating awareness, and ensuring that others would be protected in the future. The official outlined a plan. First, they would ensure a thorough and transparent investigation into the police officers' actions. Independent oversight would be involved to maintain objectivity and prevent interference. Second, they proposed implementing additional training for police officers, focusing on conflict resolution, community engagement, and nonviolent approaches. Third, they suggested creating a public forum where citizens could share their experiences and provide feedback on police conduct. Marcus listened carefully, recognizing the significance of these steps. They were practical, actionable, and had the potential to create lasting impact. As the conversation continued, Marcus realized that the officials' influence extended far beyond the city government. They had connections with state-level leaders, advocacy groups, and media outlets. Their involvement meant that Marcus's story could reach a wider audience, putting pressure on the police department to act responsibly and swiftly. It also meant that reforms could be implemented more effectively, as the support from a powerful figure could overcome bureaucratic delays and resistance. Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that his role had expanded from being a victim seeking justice to being an advocate for broader change. The official encouraged him to continue speaking publicly, sharing his story responsibly, and engaging with the community. They also advised him to take care of his well-being, reminding him that advocacy could be exhausting and emotionally draining. Marcus appreciated the guidance. It helped him see the bigger picture while also understanding the importance of self-care. Over the next few weeks, Marcus began collaborating closely with the official and their team. They organized meetings with community leaders, activists, and legal experts. Marcus shared his experience, listened to others, and contributed ideas for policy improvements. He discovered that many people had faced similar incidents, and their stories reinforced the urgency of reform. Together, they worked on creating proposals for new policies, training programs, and accountability measures. Meanwhile, the investigation into the police officers gained momentum. The powerful figure's involvement ensured that the case received the attention it deserved. Witnesses were interviewed, video evidence was analyzed, and reports were submitted promptly. The public followed the developments closely, with news outlets providing regular updates. The attention helped maintain pressure on the police department to act responsibly and fairly. Marcus felt a sense of relief, knowing that the case was being handled seriously and transparently. Despite the progress, Marcus continued to face challenges. Speaking publicly, attending meetings, and engaging with the media were emotionally taxing. He experienced moments of doubt and fear, wondering if the attention would ever fade or if the case would be delayed. But each time he felt discouraged, he reminded himself of the support from the official, his family, and the community. Their encouragement reinforced his determination to see the process through. One day, the official suggested a community event to raise awareness about police accountability and citizens' rights. Marcus agreed to participate. The event was held in a large park, with tables, banners, and informational booths. Volunteers distributed pamphlets, and speakers shared experiences and insights. Marcus stood on the stage to address the crowd, sharing his story and emphasizing the importance of justice, fairness, and community involvement. The audience responded with applause, and many approached him afterward to express gratitude and solidarity. Through these efforts, Marcus began to notice tangible changes in his community. Neighborhood meetings became more frequent, residents were more aware of their rights, and there was increased dialogue between citizens and local law enforcement. The powerful figure's support had amplified Marcus's voice and created opportunities for positive change. Marcus realized that his personal experience had evolved into a broader movement, one that could protect others and promote fairness. At home, Marcus continued to focus on his healing. He maintained his writing, journaling his experiences and reflections. He exercised regularly, took walks in nature, and spent quality time with his mother and friends. These practices helped him stay grounded amid the public attention and responsibilities. He understood that personal well-being was essential for sustaining his advocacy and ensuring that he could continue contributing meaningfully. As the investigation progressed, Marcus received updates from the official. The officers involved were temporarily suspended pending the outcome, and additional oversight measures were being implemented. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. It was not a complete resolution, but it was a significant step toward accountability. The official assured him that they would continue to monitor the situation and advocate for justice, reinforcing Marcus's confidence in the process. Marcus also began mentoring younger members of the community, sharing lessons about resilience, courage, and advocacy. He encouraged them to speak up when they witnessed injustice, to engage responsibly with authorities, and to support one another. Through these interactions, Marcus realized that his journey had created ripple effects, inspiring others to take action and make a difference. By the end of Part 4, Marcus had transformed from a man reacting to injustice into a proactive advocate for change. With the support of a powerful figure, he had gained a platform, resources, and guidance to pursue justice effectively. He understood that the journey was far from over, but he had the tools, support, and determination to navigate the challenges ahead. The incident that had once seemed like a moment of fear and pain had evolved into a catalyst for growth, advocacy, and meaningful reform. Marcus reflected on the path he had traveled. He recognized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the determination to act despite it. He had faced a terrifying situation, endured physical and emotional pain, and emerged stronger, more aware, and committed to making a difference. With the powerful figure's guidance, the support of his community, and his own resilience, Marcus knew that he could continue to fight for justice not only for himself but for everyone who had experienced similar injustice. The months following the meeting with the powerful city official were some of the most intense in Marcus Johnson's life. He had grown accustomed to public attention, media interviews, and community events, but nothing could fully prepare him for the moment when real progress began to show. The investigation into the police officers who had attacked him was finally reaching a critical stage. Marcus had been patient, understanding that justice took time, yet he couldn't help but feel anticipation building each day. One morning, Marcus received a formal call from the office of the official he had met. The voice on the other end was warm yet professional. "Marcus, we have an update on your case. The investigation has concluded, and we are moving forward with formal charges against the officers involved. They will face disciplinary action, and there will be additional training programs implemented throughout the department." Marcus felt a mix of relief and triumph. This was a long-awaited acknowledgement that what had happened to him was wrong, and it could no longer be ignored. In the following weeks, the community rallied around Marcus even more strongly. Local media covered the updates in detail, highlighting the significance of the case. Community leaders organized events celebrating accountability and justice, emphasizing the importance of standing up against wrongdoing. Marcus found himself invited to speak at schools, community centers, and city halls, sharing his journey and encouraging others to be brave in the face of injustice. He never expected to become a public figure, yet he embraced the responsibility, knowing that his voice could inspire change. At home, Marcus reflected on how much he had grown since the attack. He had learned to navigate fear, pain, and uncertainty with resilience and calm. His journaling had helped him process emotions, while his public speaking had strengthened his confidence. He had also developed a network of supporters, from the official and their team to community leaders and fellow advocates. Through these relationships, Marcus realized that change was rarely the work of one person, it was the combined effort of many working together for a common cause. The formal disciplinary action against the officers became a significant moment for the city. It sent a clear message that misconduct would not be tolerated and that citizens' rights were protected under the law. The officers involved received appropriate consequences, including suspension, mandatory retraining, and oversight to ensure accountability. Marcus attended the announcement, standing alongside the official and community leaders. He felt a mixture of emotions: relief, satisfaction, and a renewed sense of purpose. The experience reinforced his belief in justice and the importance of persistence. As news of the case spread, Marcus also began to see the positive effects on the wider community. Citizens became more engaged in conversations about policing and public safety. Neighborhood meetings grew larger, with more people attending and expressing their concerns. Community leaders reported that residents were more willing to participate in oversight committees and advocacy programs. Marcus realized that his experience had sparked a broader cultural shift, encouraging dialogue, awareness, and proactive engagement. Marcus's role as an advocate continued to expand. He was invited to participate in workshops and panels focused on civil rights, police accountability, and community engagement. He shared practical advice about how to handle difficult interactions with law enforcement, emphasizing the importance of remaining calm, documenting incidents, and seeking legal support when necessary. Marcus also spoke about the emotional impact of traumatic experiences and the importance of mental health care, sharing his own strategies for coping with stress and fear. Through his advocacy, Marcus connected with people from different backgrounds and communities. He listened to their stories, learned from their experiences, and provided support wherever he could. He discovered that while his incident was personal, it was part of a larger pattern of systemic issues. By sharing his story and amplifying others' voices, Marcus contributed to a movement focused on fairness, accountability, and positive change. At the same time, Marcus maintained his personal life. He continued his regular routines, spending quality time with his mother, catching up with friends, and focusing on his hobbies. He found balance in writing, exercising, and enjoying nature. These simple practices grounded him and provided a sense of stability amid the demands of advocacy and public attention. Marcus understood that caring for himself was essential to being effective in his work and maintaining his well-being. As the community began implementing new programs inspired by his case, Marcus noticed tangible improvements. Police officers received training in de-escalation techniques and community relations. Local schools included lessons about civil rights and civic responsibility. Neighborhood watch programs were strengthened, and residents were encouraged to participate in forums where they could voice concerns safely. Marcus felt proud, knowing that his experience had contributed to meaningful and lasting improvements. One day, Marcus received an invitation from the mayor to attend a ceremony recognizing community leaders who had contributed to justice and reform. Marcus felt honored. At the ceremony, he was introduced to people who had dedicated their lives to public service, social justice, and community advocacy. He shared his story once again, emphasizing the importance of courage, persistence, and community support. The audience responded with applause, and many approached him afterward to express gratitude and admiration. Marcus felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Reflecting on his journey, Marcus realized that the attack, while traumatic, had been a turning point in his life. It had forced him to confront fear, develop resilience, and take action in ways he had never imagined. The support from the powerful official, his legal team, and the community had amplified his efforts, creating opportunities to influence change on a broader scale. Marcus understood that the experience had transformed him, giving him a sense of purpose and direction that would guide his life moving forward. Marcus also noticed changes within himself. He had developed greater empathy, patience, and understanding. He listened more carefully to others, considered multiple perspectives, and approached challenges with a calm, thoughtful mindset. He had learned that leadership was not about control or power, but about supporting others, amplifying voices, and creating opportunities for collective growth. These lessons shaped not only his advocacy work but also his personal relationships and daily interactions. As the city continued to implement reforms inspired by his case, Marcus saw the long-term impact of his actions. Residents were more confident in engaging with law enforcement, police officers were better trained, and the community had become more unified in advocating for justice. Marcus's story became a reference point for education and awareness campaigns, highlighting the importance of standing up against injustice while promoting dialogue, understanding, and systemic improvement. By the end of the year, Marcus reflected on the journey he had undertaken. The physical scars from the attack had healed, and the emotional wounds were much less sharp. He had faced fear, injustice, and uncertainty, yet he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined. He realized that while the attack had been a moment of pain, it had also been a catalyst for growth, courage, and positive change. Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude for the support he had received, for the opportunity to make a difference, and for the chance to transform his personal struggle into a force for community good. Marcus's life continued to move forward, guided by the lessons he had learned. He remained committed to advocacy, education, and community engagement. He continued mentoring others, sharing his story, and participating in initiatives that promoted fairness, accountability, and social justice. While he knew that challenges would continue to arise, he faced them with confidence, resilience, and a sense of purpose. In the final reflection, Marcus understood that courage was not defined by the absence of fear, but by the willingness to act despite it. He had faced a moment of extreme danger and injustice, yet he had chosen to respond with integrity, perseverance, and compassion. Through his journey, he had not only sought justice for himself but had also created a pathway for others to be heard, supported, and protected. Marcus Johnson's story became a testament to the power of resilience, community, and the impact of one person's courage. It showed that even in the darkest moments, positive change was possible, and that advocacy, combined with support from allies and the community, could lead to meaningful transformation. Marcus had turned a personal tragedy into a source of hope, empowerment, and inspiration for countless others, leaving a lasting legacy that would continue to shape the community for years to come.